Good evening. I'd like to call to order the study session for the City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for April the 1st, 2024. No joke there. So we have three study items on our agenda tonight. Item number one is an update from the Jefferson County Schools with our school district, Tracy Dorland. Welcome to you and your staff for joining us. We appreciate you all being here. Our second item will be a board and commission and committee updates. Our third item is a liquor licensing authority review, some changes going on there. We usually start with comments from the public, but I don't have anyone who signed up to speak either in the hall or online, so we will move to our first agenda item, an update from the Jefferson County Public Schools. Mr. Goff, do you have a staff introduction on this one?
I think we'll just turn over to Superintendent.
Okay.
Get going.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight about the Jeffco Public School District. I have a couple of colleagues with me, and I would like to let them introduce themselves. I'm Tracy, by the way, Tracy Dorland, Superintendent for Jeffco.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Mayhew. I'm Associate Chief of Communications and Strategic Partnerships at the district, and we're just grateful to have this time together with you guys tonight to connect.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Gatlin, the Chief Operating Officer. So it's nice to see you again. Thanks for having us tonight.
So we're going to talk about a couple of things. The first opportunity is really for us to discuss the strategic plan and direction of the school district, kind of do a high-level overview of that. And then Mr. Gatlin also has an update for all of you about a topic that many people in our community are interested in, which is our property disposition process. And so are we going to, it looks like we are going to project. I just want to make sure you can see what I'm talking about. I think you may have it also in your materials, but let's first just talk about the state of our district. You can see on slide 2, right here, kind of an overview of the framework for the district strategic plan, which we call Jeffco Thrives 2025. We have set by our board a revised vision, mission, and values. And you can see those there. The vision really for us to be a thriving district where all students achieve their biggest dreams. And we want to provide a world-class education that prepares all Jeffco students for bright and successful futures locally and globally. The district Board of Education has also provided us with these 5 values that we align our work to and talk quite a bit about in the district. We have then, once the board set the mission, vision, and values, we went ahead and worked with a group of staff and community members called the Alliance, the Jeffco Alliance, to form 4 major priorities for our strategic plan. The first one is what we all think we do at public ed, our learners, our future. The second is our people, our strength. The school district is one of the largest employers in the county, and we have specific goals around also being one of the best employers in the county. Number 3 is our operations, our foundation. We have been doing a lot of work to be efficient and effective with the operations of the district. And our communities, our legacy, which is our plans for how we will partner with and welcome community into our schools, because we can't do it alone in Jeffco. We want to be good partners, and we want to make sure that we have strategic partnerships, not just random partnerships. In our Learners, Our Future, we're really focusing with our school principals, our teachers, on 2 key areas: a culture of instructional excellence and extraordinary student experiences. The culture of instructional excellence includes activities like adoption of new curriculum. We have adopted several new reading curriculums. Schools have the choice of 2 or 3 different options, and we have been rolling that out for the last 2 or 3 years. We are adopting all new mathematics curriculum, and we are really focusing in with our teachers on high quality instructional excellence and practice with students. And then, of course, the extraordinary student experience is all about why many kids come to school, whether that's a club that they get to be a part of, an athletic experience, an activity like theater. We really want to make sure that school is a place not only for academic growth for our students, but also a place where they can have amazing and extraordinary experiences. So that is the the framework for Jeffco Thrives 2025. And then this year, we really have two major initiatives. One is all about student outcomes, and the other one is making sure that our central services, our district teams, are organized in support of schools and in support of student outcomes. So that's what we've been up to, and that's the framework for how we're organizing our strategic direction in Jeffco. And so what does it mean to create a shared understanding around the work of this strategic plan? If you go to the next slide, people ask me often, what does it mean, this strategic plan you have as a superintendent? What does it mean to you? And I often say to them, I really do feel like Jeffco is a leader, building a community of leaders. And so we have some things that we're really proud of that have occurred in the last couple of years. We have 12 comprehensive Jeffco high schools, and 7 of our charter schools graduated students at a rate of 90% or higher last school year, which is definitely a point of pride. We had 1,000 students enrolled in Jeffco's CTE programs last year, and more than 5,500 Jeffco students were concurrently enrolled in college classes, which means that they earned 29,188 college credits and saved about $4.5 million in college tuition for their families, which is pretty incredible. And then in 2023, we also had about just under 1,000, about 785 students enrolled in a work-based learning course that included internships and apprenticeships. And students have been saying to us and sharing how valuable career-connected learning is for them as part of their high school experience. So we're really happy that we can provide that for those 785 students and have plans to think about expanding that. Another piece for me is that something that I've already talked a little bit about, but implementing a core literacy resource on the next slide is something that we are very proud of, and we are already seeing some really good results from. We have new resources for math. And unfortunately, we have had a really difficult and challenging experience addressing declining enrollment. As you know, our Board of Education had to make the very difficult decision to close schools. Since my time started here in Jeffco, we've closed about 20 schools, and it has been the most challenging and difficult work that I have ever done as a leader. Our communities grieved the loss of their schools, and it was very difficult for all of us to go through that process, and of course, mostly difficult for the students and families in those communities. But it was really important for us to do so that we could maximize the student experience and provide the right programs in our schools. Making sure that they're correctly and robustly enrolled allows us to make sure that they're also robustly funded for the programming that we really want to offer our students. So, we've gotten through that. I know it's still difficult for people, but I do believe it was the right work to do, and proud of the Board of Education for making that difficult decision. And so now that the schools are closed, we've launched a property disposition process. I'm going to go ahead and let my colleague, our Chief Operating Officer, Jeff Gatlin, talk to you a little bit about what that property disposition process looks like.
Yeah, and I certainly enjoyed time that I spent here with y'all, where some of you back in, might have been October, November-ish, when Roger Sherman, a consultant that we use around public engagement, came to present around property disposition. So just wanted to retouch on this. We've learned a few things. We've made a few changes to our process that I wanted to make you aware of. But again, this is our process for property disposition and the flow that it follows. There's really 3 phases to the disposition process around discovery, which is really where our public engagement starts in this process, and I know that's of particular interest to you. And then proposals, and then ultimately contracting. I will say with the first 2 properties that we've put through this process, our Allendale property in Arvada and our Zerger property in Westminster, we are right at the bottom right corner of this process where we're in the contracting and negotiation process. So we're getting close to kind of working through the entire process with those 2 properties. And so we'll see when we're able to bring that back to the board and hopefully have a little more clarity on those 2. One of the things that we that we have changed and added is the box on the top part of the screen that's in green around municipal interest process. And I think that on the next slide kind of speaks to that. But what we learned was we wanted to provide a clear process that when we decide to surplus a property, if a municipality reaches out to us and says, hey, we have a real interest in acquiring a property for a specific reason or interest of the municipality, that we are transparent and open around a process that we want to follow. So this is, I think, one of our learnings as we've been going through this to say, okay, there is interest. Let's make sure we're clear about what we follow in order to see if there's a good fit and if the municipality interest will ultimately result in a lease or purchase of one of our buildings or sites. I know that there's particular interest in the Wheat Ridge community around Kohler Strand and Wilmore Davis. We are bringing additional properties to our board next week to study for surplus. Those two properties are not included in the next wave of properties. We're still working on sequencing and timing of all of our properties that of our closed sites. But we will be studying with our board properties in Arvada and a couple properties in Lakewood. So just so you know, that's going to be kind of our next phase. And I think it's also important to mention when we are ready and when we are thinking about properties in your community, the two that I mentioned, we'll be engaged with Mr. Goff and city staff to give them a heads up and to talk through what are the interests, what are some ideas, and make sure that we're engaging closely through the process. We have heard from our communities that, we know this is of high interest, especially the neighbors, to the community members that live nearby. We're very specific and targeted in our marketing and outreach around mailers, around making sure that those community members have an opportunity to attend information gathering sessions and really are engaged right at the beginning of the process. They also have an opportunity to be a member of an ad hoc committee that's specific to that property and kind of following the process through our proposal and contracting portion of the process as well. So I just want you to be aware that happens, and that will be happening when we get to that point in the process. And one last thing before I hand it back over to Superintendent Dorland is if you are getting questions, if you are getting inquiries about properties in your community, we just launched a new website, which has a lot of information, and it's a little bit easier to access now. A lot of information about property disposition on our website. And I'm always happy to take an email or a question too, if you want to pass them along to me, and we can make sure you get connected to my email address, because I'd be happy to make sure the questions are being answered that are coming to you through your communities. So Superintendent Dorland, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks. So the next portion of our presentation really is a bit of a norming on how schools are funded. And making sure that our community understands the component parts that make up our revenue. So you can see on this slide that there are three real sources of revenue that make up our budget. The first one is our local share, which is the fixed tax rate set by the state of Colorado and applied to all taxpayers. And it basically, state law says that we must certify 27 mills as a local contribution. Then the state share kicks in, and it provides funding from state income tax and sales tax that backfills our local share to get us to our total program. And then finally, local communities can pass what are called mill levy overrides. You guys are probably very familiar with this kind of taxing authority. The Board of Education has that authority as well. And we have passed some mill levy overrides in Jeffco for the purpose of funding public ed. And the mill levy overrides take you from your total program and rise above the total program at the local level. And different districts and communities have different amounts of mill levy overrides based on what the school boards in those districts have decided to do in the past. We're going to see some of the differences in that in a minute here. If you look over here at the pitcher, the water jug or milk jug, whatever we want to call this thing, it kind of puts it all together for you. So you can see that there's a green portion of when local funding, of our local funding, and then the state share backfills to get to our total program, and mill levy overrides go on top of that. One of the things that I think is a real misnomer and that we need for everybody in our communities to understand is that when property taxes increase, the revenue of the school district does not increase. Basically, all that happens is that purple or the green portion of the picture gets higher, and the state decreases its backfill. And we still stay at the same total program of general fund money. In addition, our mill levy override portion really doesn't increase either, because it is none, except for the 2018 mill levy override, which is a small portion of our overrides, none of the previous overrides were tied to inflation. And so they're just static. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second here as well. So if you go to the next slide, this is showing you a little bit about how that mill levy override really leads to some challenges that we're having here in Jeffco to keep up with our neighbors. And so you'll see that we are the second largest school district in the state, and we are still falling behind several Front Range districts when it comes to funding. So you'll see the number of students, the total program funding down the left-hand side, which is the per student based on an FTE finance formula. That's the total program that the state formula kicks out. Additional voter-approved mill levy overrides on a per student calculation, and then a percent of those overrides as their total district funding. And then across the top, you'll see Jeffco, Denver, Cherry Creek, and Boulder, 3 of our closest neighbors. And you'll see the number of students, the total program, and the amount of mill levy overrides that the district receives. And you'll just see that we're behind. And so it's much easier for a Boulder or a Cherry Creek or a Denver to keep up with, for example, teacher salaries, which, by the way, salaries make up about 88% of the district budget because we're all about people who serve kids. And so we are pretty far behind in our revenue, which leads to, let's go to the next slide, the question of like, why? And there's really 3 challenges that are leading to us being behind with our revenue. The first is that we have lost out on over about $930 million due to the state's budget stabilization factor. Statewide, for the last 14 years, the state has run all the districts through the finance formula and then applied a budget stabilization factor because they couldn't afford the formula. And so Jeffco's proportionate share of those lost funds is over $900 million over the last 14 years. Now, this year, the State Finance Act is going to go ahead and remove the budget stabilization factor and fully fund that portion of it. And you may have heard the governor and other legislators talking about how they are fully funding K-12. They are fully funding K-12 education at 1989 levels, which is when this formula was built, and what we would be funded at 1989 levels, not including inflation. So we are grateful that the state legislature is buying down the BS factor and that they are going to no longer remove that from the total program. But we are not going to receive any of that $930 million for our schools in back pay. And that's a challenge. The second challenge is that we've not maximized our override capacity. So we can go up to a certain level on our mill levy overrides, and Jeffco has not maxed out that capacity. Other districts have, like Cherry Creek, Boulder, and Denver. And finally, we have not tied previous mill levy overrides to inflation, and other districts have. So the $20 million that we passed in an override in 2001 is worth $20 million today. Whereas in other districts, when they've passed mill levy overrides of 20 million in the early 2000s, say, they might now be worth 32 million because they've applied inflation each year. So it's just been very difficult for us to keep up. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see what some of the impact has been on our where we are in terms of competitive compensation for teachers, for example. And this is just one employee group. I mean, I could show you the same data for bus drivers or special ed paraprofessionals. But for teachers, you'll see that our average teacher salary at almost $72,000 is at the bottom of the Front Range. And that's a real challenge. It's a real challenge not only to recruit teachers in who are high quality and want to serve our kids, it's a challenge also to retain the amazing teachers that we have. And it's, in my mind, it's not honoring of the staff who have decided to live here, work here, and commit to our students. So one of my priorities has been compensation and making sure that our employees are taken care of. And so you can see some additional market analysis compensation for teachers. It shows you kind of where people are, if they're at the step 1 on our salary schedule, where they are at midpoint and maximum, and how far below they are other districts in the Front Range at those same kind of categories in their career. You can see where some of our paraprofessionals are, and you can see that our elementary principal data is also somewhat below market. So it's just a challenge that we need to start talking about, and we likely in the next few years need to do something about through something like a mill levy override. The next slide is just an important point, I think, around this investment in Jeffco employees is really an investment in our local community. So as we started looking at this issue of how competitive we are with compensation compared to other Front Range districts, one of the things we realized is that while yes, salary and benefits account for about 85, 87, depends on the year, % of our budget and our expenses, 81% of our employees live in Jeffco. And so when we feel strongly that when we invest in our employees, we are also investing in our communities because the vast majority of our employees are also Jeffco residents. And so that's just a really interesting data point for you to understand. And that's all we have for you tonight in terms of what we wanted to share, but I know we're also open if it's of interest to you all to have some conversation.
We always love questions and conversations. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Superintendent Dorland, for being here and everybody. My kids attended Color Strand last year, and so I got to know a few of you a little bit over the last year. And I appreciate the hard work that your team has done. I know that's a tough process to go through, and 16 schools plus now a few more. I have a few questions, but do you think you guys have closed enough schools to kind of meet the budgetary needs and the student needs? And I guess I'll start with that.
You know, I do think we're done closing schools for a while here in Jeffco, and I can confidently say that because we did the hard work that we needed to do. We are in the middle of a boundary study right now. There's been several reports that have been published. You can find those on board docs. And we're on our final report, which is a programming review. And what programs do we have where? We're doing some focus groups with families so that we can understand better how families are choosing schools, because school choice is, almost, not quite, but almost 50% of our families are choosing a school outside their neighborhood schools. Just fascinating. We want to understand that more. And so at this point, I do not anticipate closing any more schools. What I do hope through this boundary study is that it gives us some really important information about what our families are choosing, why they're choosing that for their child, what programming they want, what types of schools they want. But I'm also hopeful that one of the outcomes from the study will be a roadmap sort of plan for the district that contemplates what the district can and should be doing so that things don't linger and get to a place where we found ourselves in 2022. I showed up in April of 2021. By the fall of 2021, I was aghast at the enrollment challenges that were facing us, and there was no map for what to do about it. There had been no community conversation. There had been no real conversation with our school leaders. And we had to move pretty quickly because it was so challenging. And that wasn't good for any of us. It wasn't good for our communities. It wasn't good for us as district leaders, our principals, our students, most importantly. And so we would like to make sure that the district is better positioned to be ready for demographic changes. And the boundary study, I believe, will allow us to create a plan that says, in 2028 or 2029 or 2030, the district should be paying attention to this part of the district and having conversations about and paying attention to what's happening with enrollment and demographic changes and shifts. So that's another hope for us, that that the boundary study will kind of be a roadmap for what we need to look at when in the next 20, 30 years. It doesn't mean we're going to do what's in that plan, but it does, I think, hold the district accountable for paying attention and having the conversations along the way.
I appreciate that. That's a great answer. As far as the boundary study goes, I own a martial arts school. I work with about 15, 20 Jeffco schools in a year. Are you looking at like cultures of some of the areas as well, like how some of the schools maybe mesh together as they move to middle school and on to high school? Is that a part of that study at all?
We're looking at like articulation areas, and we have mostly kind of a hybrid between sort of pure articulation area, which means every elementary school goes into one middle school, goes into one high school, right? Or two middle schools and then one high school. What we have discovered through the boundary study and just the study of the closure issue in general is that we have some areas that have just one middle school, right? And so it's like, what do you do if, for example, the Moore middle school issue in Pomona was incredibly challenging. We had fewer than 300 middle schoolers. It was 2-something in that building. And fortunately, the community and the principals came together and said, we have a vision and an idea. And we were able to say, great, start talking about it. Make sure you include the community. And, this notion of Pomona as a 612 was born. And then that's the direction we're moving. And so there are some ahas from the boundary study around articulation areas. Another area that we've dug, in addition to Pomona, another area that we've dug into is Jefferson. Just the number of students in the articulation area is really low, the number of school-aged children. And we're trying to create projections forward to say, is it going to get better or is it going to continue to decline? We've spent a lot of time with the state demographer who is telling us it's not going to go up anytime soon. So prepare yourself that, you've level set for now, but you're going to have the articulation area conversation at some point. Because if you have, for example, 1,000 kids in an articulation area, is that a sustainable amount of students and robust enough enrollment to continue to sustain a comprehensive high school? Or do you need to think differently about what that high school offers and the kind of programming that it might provide for students, both in that articulation area and around that school or elsewhere? And so we are also engaged in a process called, and I don't want anybody to think that means we're going to close a high school. I have no appetite to close a high school. I do not think that's a good idea. I don't think that's good for any of our communities, and I would not be recommending the closure of any high schools. But we might start to look at what kind of programming does that high school offer? Does it become more of a career technical education pathway for students, both students who live around that area and students who might want to go there for that program because it's something relevant and interesting and powerful for our kids. So those are the kinds of conversations that we're having in that regional kind of articulation area.
Okay. What kind of things did you learn from the closure process? And I know the boundary study aside, from maybe public engagement or,
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen, and I'd be happy to share with all of you, but we have done some after-action review white papers around the closure process so that the district would have in hand, if we ever have to do this again in the future, here's some lessons learned. Here's what we did that was a real challenge and a struggle, and we should do differently. And by the way, we did some of those things early on in the process and then shifted pretty immediately. We, for example, hired a facilitation group for our first round of community meetings, and it did not go well. And so we regrouped very quickly and started facilitating those more ourselves. And so that's in the paper, for example. Like the district really should have thought about this differently and pretty quickly pivoted, but it still wasn't a great first round of community engagement. And there's a lot in there that talks about both what we've done well and what some of the things that were big challenges and that we would need to do differently next time. And there's a series of those. I think there's 3. 3. So I'm happy to follow up and we can get you those papers and you can take a look at those.
Appreciate
We've
that.
been sharing them with many other districts who are also now going through this so that they hopefully can learn from what we did well and what we didn't do well, and try to avoid some of the missteps that we made.
Yeah, I was a part of one of the first round ones. It was rough. But,
Let me,
oh, sorry.
could we hold off?
Yeah, that's
I've
fine.
got a few other questions
That's fine.
that
Go
are,
ahead.
that are here. Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is, I have a senior graduating from Lakewood High School who's done 2 years of Warren Tech also and been concurrently earning some college credits and AP credits and just, we're really incredibly impressed with the education that he's received. But wearing my city council member hat, I am one of 2 council members representing the district where Wilmore Davis is located.
Yeah.
So my district's been heavily impacted by that closure, and it just happens to be close to my neighborhood too. So I'm going to pivot over and look at you a little bit more. So I'm relieved to hear that our schools that have been closed are not on this upcoming list of schools that you're evaluating for whether or not to retain them. A couple things that are happening in Wheat Ridge that I think are really closely tied to the city's interest in both Color Strand and Wilmore Davis. One is we are kicking off in just a couple weeks, basically an update to our comprehensive plan. We're calling it the city plan. And we have a really engaged steering committee, and they've brought up these the schools as well as the school properties are really integral to the city's vision of itself today, but especially moving forward. And then the second thing is we are also initiating our master planning for our parks and recreation. And as I'm sure you know, we use Color Strand actively as a playing field and has some use of the Wilmore Davis playing field for soccer. So Councilor Ohm and I have met with city staff, and I know District 3 council members also. We're really wanting to take a good look at what is the city's interest in those as part of our Parks and Recreation vision. And then, are there other things that could be of interest on those properties? So that's my big rambling introduction. So I think the one ask that's at the forefront is we would really like the time for those properties to be considered under our 2 planning processes, so that we as a city can bring forward our best idea on what to do with those properties if it's something we decide that really aligns with the vision our community is bringing forward. So I think the thing that would make the most difference for us is to have some time for us to complete those processes, so that should a good vision come out of that. One of the things that makes me really proud to serve the city of Wheat Ridge is that we are so good at when we see something that we want to make happen, we are incredibly good at making it happen. And I think there would be just like a compounding sense of loss if we lost those opportunities along with losing the schools. So I think that's at the forefront of the ask tonight. And beyond that, we, as you know, we're pretty creative in how we think about that stuff. And we're really looking forward to partnering with the district to figure out the highest and best use for those properties. But at the forefront, we'd love a little more time to get through the planning process.
Thank you. Counselor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for joining us tonight. So just 2 things. The programs in Warren Tech have massive waiting lists, and there's a lot of students that don't get those opportunities. So when you were talking about kind of maybe moving some career technical education into the high schools, is that something that you think would be able to relieve those long wait lists?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have kicked off a large, and I would say probably multi-year project called High School Reimagined. We've had students talking to us about wanting different types of learning experiences. Our deputy superintendent, Dr. Kim LeBlanc Esparza, has a real strong vision for this work and has done some similar work in previous districts. And basically, the project consists of a few key areas of focus. One is, what is the resume of a Jeffco graduate? When the kiddos cross that graduation stage, what could they put on a resume to an employer or a university or a community college to say, these are the skill sets I have had the opportunity to develop and hone in as a Jeffco Public Schools student, whether I attended Arvada West, Lakewood, Golden, Ralston. This is what we're guaranteeing that they have in terms of skill set. The second part of this is pathways. And so right now, we actually do have career and technical education experiences at all 3 Warren Tech campuses, which everybody's pretty familiar with. But we also have many CTE experiences in our high schools as well. And they're just not really marketed very well. And we're not really sure where everything is and how systemic it is. One of the challenges is that these programs, especially the ones that are in the high schools, are often started up and developed because of an individual, right? A passionate teacher who wants to do something with a group of kids, and it's wonderful, it's great, but there's no real systemic district oversight and guidance for these types of things, so that we're guaranteeing students, no matter which high school they go to, have opportunities for career tech ed. And, you know, for example, in my previous district, when we expanded our CTE campuses and added a new building, we also included transportation to our CTE buildings. Many of our highly impacted students who don't have cars of their own, or non-working parents or family members who can drive them during the day, they don't have access to Warren Tech campuses. So could we imagine a routing system where they could hop on a bus, right? Get there, get back. Other districts have done it, and it's just one of those like systems pieces that Jeffco has not yet focused in on. So we are considering what kinds of pathways do we have, and then what type of career technical education or just relevant learning experiences do students need to sort of experience that type of pathway. One of the pathways that we are exploring and currently writing grants for right now is a public health and safety pathway. We have a very strong relationship with the DeAngelis Center and the DeAngelis Foundation. We have an incredible R1 safety team that works for the district, and in amazing partnerships with our law enforcement, municipality and county teams. And so we are thinking about Moore Middle School as a possible location for a pathway for students who want to study public safety types of careers. And so that's just one example of a pathway. The third thing we are talking about with our high school principals is similar to how we have a seminal experience in the 6th grade for students with outdoor lab. We would like to see every Jeffco high school student have a seminal internship or career experience where they get to work for a concerted period of time within an industry side by side with professionals and experts aligned to something that they might want to consider as a career. Now, they may end up coming out of that experience saying, nope, that's not it. I think that's just as valuable as if they come out of that experience saying, yes, I'm so excited about this. So that's a vision as a part of the High School Reimagined. And right now what we're doing is working very closely with our high school principals. So we don't have all the answers to this, but we do have an imagined vision state for what high school could look like in the next 5 years. And our high school principals do have the answers, and their teams and their buildings do. So we're doing a program review to figure out what career tech ed programs are where. How do we make sure that we provide a better systemic understanding of what's available to our families and our students so that they know where they can go to experience what type of extraordinary student experience. And we're going to be publishing this Jeffco resume of Jeffco graduate, and also doing some pathways work. So it's a lot. It's not where it needs to be. I think your questions are the right ones, but it is work that we're excited about and doing.
Thank you, and I'm excited for our students in the future to be able to utilize those. And then just my next question, Patrick, can you remind me what the median area income is for Jeffco? Is it?
Oh, Jansen would have that.
Yeah, it's like is it 80?
80? No, it's not that high.
Lower
No,
than
it's in the, it's 58 or
58 or
62-ish,
60,
somewhere in
yeah.
there, I believe.
I bring it up because I think it's important that you're doing the work to be able to recruit and retain our high quality instructors in our schools. And I appreciate that it is a high level focus for you. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Weaver.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple questions or comments about how you are communicating this to a community. I will start out with, I don't happen to have children. And so, but I teach at CU Denver, and I teach about demographic change. So one of the things I've sort of noticed, because we're obviously facing the same issue in that, peak education was in 2010, and we're all looking at those numbers in education. But I feel like that piece, and maybe it is being communicated in more parent meetings, but I feel like in some of these closures, because while universities aren't necessarily closing doors, they're reducing programs in the same kinds of way. And I don't feel like anyone in this, I haven't seen any community really talking about the actual demographic change that's happening. And it's not the fault of the district or the fault of the state or whatever. So that's one of my comments. And having to do with the schools that are closed here in Wheat Ridge, I'm getting calls that we often get as counselors, but sort of what's happening with that school. I heard it's going to be a homeless shelter. Sort of this panic that starts to arise. And we're going through this as a community with a major hospital closing and moving, thankfully, still in Wheat Ridge. But that sort of panic of what happens when the doors close. And I'm not sure, it would be lovely if in explaining the disposition process, and I understand you can't put a ton of information out there, but just even a timeline of what that looks like. Because of course, people want to know from me what's going to happen with the school. And of course, I don't have an answer for that because you all own the property. And I explain that, all the things that aren't going to happen in the foreseeable future. But if there's a way to somehow communicate that to the people who are not getting communication from Jeffco schools, because if I weren't a teacher at CU, I wouldn't know any of this since I don't happen to have children in schools. So it would be really great if somehow in that community process, because I know people are going to your site who aren't worried about the student experience or anything like that. They're saying, what's going to happen to that school down the street from me? And they're just a little panicked. And it might make a lot of the process, because I feel like some days a lot of my job with the city is just stopping, some rumor from going too far. And I know you all probably face that too. And I think just sort of some straight communication about the fact that, yes, we've had a massive demographic change. In demographic change, we have to close buildings. That's really hard on a community, and it will have a new life as something else, but this is the process. So sorry, I guess that wasn't a question. It was more of sort of a comment of as much information as you can put out about that process for just the person. Because right now, I don't go to the site because it's very much set up for parents, which it should be, to your point, right? You deal with students and that experience. But if there is some way to sort of better understand this process, since it will be a big piece of what you're doing for the next year or so, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate the ongoing conversation. It got off to a rocky start. I actually started my political career in 2017 and decided to run because we were talking about closing Pennington Elementary. And I recognized that the demographics were significantly shifting in our community, and Wheat Ridge, as a city, was not attracting young families into the area because we didn't have a diverse set of businesses. people were aging in place. And so we needed to have some people that were willing to embrace the change and the ability to bring families into the community. I really appreciate the partnership with the Green on 38th. That really settled a lot of my concerns, particularly after the school closures, in that we are going to have a more positive experience in partnering with the district moving forward. And so I really appreciate Councilmember Holtein's comments, and, you know, we're going through these robust processes as to like what the city of Wheat Ridge is going to look like in the next 20 to 50 years. I think this council, this body, and the body before us have done a really good job at holistically looking at what it is we want the city of Wheat Ridge to look like. And some of us have lived here for our entire lives and have gone to schools in this community through Jeffco. And I love the pathways conversation. And it's not only a pathway for our students, but also for our teachers. Because if we're going to be looking at specialized education experiences, we need to have the teachers set up in the right environments to be able to continue that legacy. You know, Peak Expeditionary has been a success story, and what does reinventing and innovating education look like? But also, who's going to carry that torch after the person who initially came in and founded that kind of a school? And I mean, that was one of our concerns going into a middle school after going through Montessori and then expeditionary learning. There's really not any project-based learning education experiences in this area. And so I really appreciate the fact that we have school choice and that families can choose to what best suits them and their student. But I also have just such a heartfelt, you know, appreciation for neighborhood schools, and the fact that for quite some time we were able to walk or bike to school on the first day, like it was a tradition. And I really want to continue these conversations, and I think that we have the ability to say, like, us as a body, what's best for our community moving forward in these buildings. And yes, we have a lot of rumors that seem to catch fire quicker than the truth these days. But it says a lot that you're here and that you're willing to give us this update. And I really appreciate that you're also focused on student outcomes. You know, I think particularly after COVID, we saw a significant slide in students not meeting the standard level of education. And so I think that we really need to be focused on graduating students at a grade level so that they're successful, they know how to read, they know how to write, they know, you know, arithmetic, they know all of the basics that education was founded upon, especially public education. And so I think that that's a wonderful thing to shift to. And I think my biggest question right now is, can you give us an idea of a timeline of these ongoing conversations of like, when would we potentially see, oh, Peak Expeditionary is calling me, I must be getting an update from our principal of fun, Tim Carlin. How timely. Just like moving forward, like those articulation area conversations, or if we're going to be opening a school to offer more technical education, and really like when do you foresee this vision coming to fruition?
Yeah.
So I'll speak a little bit to the timeline for High School Reimagine and developing kind of what Superintendent was kind of talking about is really an exemplar pathway model. Like she mentioned, we have many pathways. So I think we're hoping to start offering programming towards that health and public safety pathway as soon as fall of 2025. So we're actively working to bring in some funding from some grant sources to be able to get that off the ground. I think you bring up a good point to talk about our educators who would provide career technical training in that way. They have to be, they have greater certifications. There's different compensation for folks that are coming in from industry. So those are all important considerations. But we are working to quickly being able to lay the groundwork to be able to start to take in our first group of students really just a little over a year from now.
And aside from also like teachers and educators, can you speak to some of the partnerships and relationships within the community that you're maybe pursuing for some of that technical expertise? Because like I really have loved seeing the STEM and STEAM program at Wheat Ridge High School, but that was really founded on one individual. And it's an incredible program, and I'd love to see it continue and be supported, you know, financially. And like I think that Wheat Ridge High School has gone in a really good direction. So I guess my question would really just be like, what are the funding mechanisms to continue those? And like, how do you foresee that, like, you know, coming to fruition in the future?
Yeah, in terms of, specific funding sources, we're constantly looking, and that's one of my primary jobs and roles right now, is looking into what funds exist, both through grant funding opportunities, but are there also private investors and corporations who are interested in partnering with K-12 education to see some programs like this come to fruition? There absolutely are. And there's models around the country and districts who have partnered closely to bring in some of those funding investments. And so that is something that we are looking on right now. And I can tell you, last Friday, we submitted a grant application for some federal monies to the tune of, I think it was about $2.5 million to help with some seed money for the development of this particular public health and safety pathway. And so we're moving very quickly to try to see this come to life. We're also, I think it was in January, we kicked off conversations. We brought in a consultant who really has done a lot of work successfully in the K-12 space, specifically in Colorado, to partner with industry and also to bring in funding. And we have been in active conversations, having weekly and biweekly meetings with all of our law enforcement agencies in Jefferson County, as well as our higher ed providers, to talk about what is their need on the industry side for students in the public health and safety roles. Where would they be interested in providing actual real world work experience, internship opportunities? Would they hire our students after they received a certain amount of training into jobs? So how can our students leave this pathway and to be able to earn a living wage and to be able to start a career if they wanted, or to begin a career while also obtaining additional stackable credentials? And it's been actually really exciting to see the energy with our community partners in law enforcement and in higher ed, who are very interested in partnering in this work, who've sent representatives to these ongoing meetings to start to put the framework together. So we're really excited because, as Superintendent Dorland says all the time, we can't do this work alone, particularly when we're looking at these pathway opportunities. So, yeah.
And Mayor Pro Tem Stites, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Superintendent Dorland. I thank you for your time. It's really important to have partnerships with the school district. Thank you so much for the green. That was such a, it's a wonderful opportunity that for generations we're gonna have that space to, use with Jeffco and the community. Really important. My co-counselor Hotine, we talked about the two schools, the Color Strand and Wilmer Davis. I live a few blocks from Wilmer Davis. My kids went there. I was able to walk them there when they were little, and now they're in high school at Wheat Ridge High School. And my daughter, successfully, she's gotten into every college she has applied to. And so, I have to say thank you to Jeffco that they did a good job teaching, and very proud of her. But and the other thing too is that even the Wilmer Davis today, like as it's closed right now, my son and my daughter will still go behind that area and just play ball, throw something. And when my daughter was in probably like middle school, she would go to the Color Strand to play soccer. It was something she really loved to do, and that was a really important area. So those green spaces are really important to our community. I have conversations in my neighborhood before the school closed about how they were so happy that the school was there, and that was one of the reasons. It was a handful, not a lot, but that space is always being used. It's not that people have forgotten about it, it still gets used a lot, all the time. And it's always kind of continuously activated. And so it's definitely a part of our community. And so I really appreciate the opportunity and just kind of echo what my co-counselor said about, we're working on these studies and we really value the partnership with Jeffco. Thank you.
Pro Tem Stites.
And I'll echo what Councilor Ohm and Hulteen said about that. Color Strand especially is a big soccer field for us, and the playground was something that we as a city invested in because it's one of the only parks in the area. Before last year's school closures, I don't think that the city staff and the Jeffco staff had a whole lot of collaboration, it sounds like. So I guess if one good thing has come from that, the city staff and it sounds like the district staff have come together a lot more and started working a lot more together. So we had our district meeting the other day, and that was something that we had a few parents in the room that raised their hand and said they really want to see the city work a lot more with Jeffco Public Schools, and that's something that I agree with as as an elected official, but as a parent, I'd like the city and to be able to at least kind of be in line with what they're telling us. So I would push for the staffs to continue to work together, and I encourage the school board members to reach out to us, and I'd love to hold district meetings with Michelle or whatever as far as that goes, because I think that the more we work together, that's going to be better for all of our constituents. So thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate definitely the Green and Jeff, everybody for the collaboration on that.
Thank you. Well, Superintendent, I want to thank you for coming, a very enlightening presentation, and you're bringing your staff with us. I want to make particular note that we're working together on the Green at 38th and the new parking lot for Stevens Elementary. We're really excited about that project. We're, and I think to echo Mayor Pro Tem Stites, I think we're looking for a closer relationship with our schools and the leadership in the district, and how our community and really our city leadership can engage more actively and fluidly with that. But I want to thank you very much for coming. It's not a start, it's another step on the way, but we appreciate you being here, and we look forward to continuing a dialogue.
I can just add to that real quick. I'll just echo what Councilmember Stites said. Yeah, Tracy, thank you for bringing Jeff on. Very, very quickly, very short time. Yeah, you've been a year. Have you been on board yet? So yeah, Jeff's awesome to work with, and you are too, Tracy. I think most of you know this. The city manager group meets with, and Tracy comes to our meetings usually on a monthly basis. So we're a very close relationship, I think. And Jeff's been great on a lot of things, not just the Green. Helped us with a tree branch offsite just very recently at the very last second. So it's been great. So thank you. Yes. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate
Okay.
the invitation and the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. Board and commissions. Okay, we're going to move to our second agenda item. This is a discussion on the 2023 Board and Commission Annual Report. So, Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we had quite a few changes to our board and commission code here over the last year. Try to clean some things up, make it more efficient, but with Cole's help. And one suggestion from council was to have some regular updates from our board and commissions, and we have some of our chairs and different members maybe of our board and commissions here this evening. So this will be our first round this evening. We'll have a second round of updates, I believe, in May, So Cole, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Goff, members of council, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure for all of the staff liaisons to our public bodies and myself to be able to present the 2023 Boards and Commissions Annual Report to you. As Mr. Goff said, this is a presentation that we're giving you in addition to the report. And tonight we'll briefly cover about 5 of the 9 public bodies that are included in the report. But let's go ahead and get started. So as Mr. Goff said, this is a report that we developed in response to council's request for increased communication with the city's public bodies. That came out of a study session that we had with council in August when we were focusing on how to improve the way that our boards and commissions interact with the city council and operate here. So this Boards and Commissions annual report is largely focused on the achievements of our different public bodies in 2023 and the upcoming items that they'll address in 2024. It goes over this for 9 different public bodies in detail. And before I want to move on, I want to take a moment to recognize that this is really a great opportunity for us to highlight all the work that the 70 volunteers who make up these different public bodies, all the work that they do and contribute to the city in their free time on a weekly and a monthly basis. So this is celebrating some of their actions as well as staff's. And tonight we'll be covering that for 5 of 9 public bodies. The ones we'll be talking about tonight, first we'll start with the Community Partners Grant Program Committee. And then I'll turn the presentation over to Jana Easley, our planning manager, to talk about the Building Code Advisory Board and the Board of Adjustment. She'll turn it over to Lauren Mikulak, our Community Development Director, to talk about the Planning Commission. And finally, Mary Hester, our Sustainability Coordinator, will wrap up the presentation with a focus on sustainable Wheat Ridge. So with that, let's get started with the Community Partners Grant Program Committee. And I'd like to start with a brief explanation of what the program is. So the Community Partners Grant Program, or the CPGP, is a city-sponsored grant program supporting locally focused nonprofit agencies and programs. And that word program is really key there. Because that allows us to fund programs that aren't profit-driven, but that might come from for-profit organizations, for example. The CPGP committee is responsible for reviewing all applications to this program, having a discussion amongst themselves about what the schedule of funding recommendations they want to deliver to the city council is, and then presenting its award recommendations to council for consideration. And briefly, I'd like to go over the evaluation criteria that the CPGP committee uses when they're evaluating these applications and deciding if they want to give them their full funding request or consider giving them more or less. So first, they look at the application and they see if it's responding to an identified community need, something that's in demand and highly needed in our community. Next, it moves on to consider the estimated number of Wheat Ridge residents that the program can serve in a year. Then it considers the quality of life and the health, safety, and welfare impacts of the proposed program. And then it also looks to make sure that the program has some strong performance measurements associated with it. That way we know that they're focused on tracking their progress and always looking to make additional improvements. In 2023, the CPGP committee reviewed 28 applications reflecting a record-breaking $284,000 in funding requests for the 2024 grant cycle. And I think that record-breaking request mark represents a couple of different things. First, city staff did a fantastic job marketing the program. So we had quite a few new applicants last year in 2023. Also, as we've seen a decline in federal support and federal dollars for some of our socially focused programs in the community, people are looking to continue their programs through other funding mechanisms like the Community Partners Grant Program. The committee ultimately recommended awarding $200,000 in awards, which was an increase of $40,000 compared to the last grant cycle. So those are quite monumental changes for the committee, and we hope to see new organizations applying every year so that we can continue to find the ones that support our community in the best way. In 2024, we have one primary focus area, and that's that the Community Partners Grant Program is introducing some new contracting and reporting requirements for 2024 recipients and recipients moving forward. In order to fit in with that, we've also changed the application slightly to reflect those changes. And because we know some of these changes are new, especially for our kind of legacy CPGP applicants who have applied several times before, and that they may be burdensome to some of our smaller organizations who are applying, we've worked really hard to develop several instructional materials and to issue those to the public and to potential applicants to help them meet these new requirements. Overall, the goal of these new requirements is to make sure that the city's dollars are being used in the areas where these organizations say that they are going to use them. So the contracting protects us from any potential misuse, although we're pretty confident that's not going to happen because we only give some money to some of the best organizations in our community. But it's just a kind of safety net in case something goes wrong. And then those year-end reporting requirements give us that opportunity to make sure when everything's said and done that they've spent the money in the way that we wanted them to spend the money. That's the end of the presentation for the Community Partners Grant Program. I'll turn it over to Lauren so that she can cover the Building Code Advisory Board.
Thank you. Good evening. So our next three boards are staffed by Community Development. And you got to meet Renee Mario last week, our Chief Building Official. She and I staff our Building Code Advisory Board. We like a good acronym. Sometimes we call it the BCAB. I'll try to refrain from that. I'll keep this pretty short because this group did not actually meet in 2023. But they're an important board that serves an important role when they're called upon. The Building Code Advisory Board is called for not only in city code, but also in the international building codes for the specific purpose of reviewing appeals of the decisions of the chief building official. So those could be decisions related to how we interpret the code, what kind of materials are allowed. For example, you heard last week that sometimes the material is not even contemplated in the code and can it be used despite the code being silent. Sometimes they hear appeals related to contractor license suspensions. Because this role requires familiarity with the technical building codes, the municipal code requires more than just interest in building codes, but real specific experience. So we have 5 members, all of whom must have relevant experience, and that means that our membership usually includes somebody from architecture, engineering, contractor, or some sort of related field. For better or worse, as I mentioned, we don't have a lot of appeals of our chief building official, so there was no meetings of this board last year. But we historically rely on the advisory board when it comes to adoption of our new codes. We got to send out our kickoff email last week after we had the council study session to let them know that we will be meeting a handful of times in 2024 to talk about the 2024 international codes. We have a full and qualified board right now. So we appreciate you making that recent appointment, and we'll have a more substantive update this time next year. Thanks. Turn it over to Jana for our next 2.
Hi, good evening. I'm just gonna, everybody, I had somebody call me Jana the other day, but it's just Jana. I answer to Jana though too. I get all sorts of different pronunciations. Together, my name confuses people. Anyway, thanks for having me. And I'm going to be reviewing with you tonight, kind of back to back, the Board of Adjustment and also the Planning Commission. And I'll give you some overview of what they do and why they're important. So I'm going to start with the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment has an important mission because they review variances and waivers in a quasi-judicial manner. And they also can provide interpretations of these regulations, and I'll step into this a little bit deeper in the next slide. They only met once in 2023, and it was to go over revisions to the bylaws. But in March, just last week, we actually heard 2 variance cases, and they were both very unique. So it sort of ebbs and flows. So with regard to variances and waivers, they might be looking at off-street parking and loading, exterior lighting, fences and walls, accessory buildings and signs. On interpretations, they can make interpretations of words or phrases in Chapter 26 or also of approved development plans. And then they also not as commonly or frequently, but they can also issue or approve temporary permits for uses, buildings, signs, and non-operative vehicles. And that would be in such a case where maybe somebody's restoring a vehicle and it's not operative, but they need a temporary permit to have it at their home. So a lot of times we get questions about when is it staff reviewing a variance and when is it the Board of Adjustment. Staff typically reviews variances that are less than 50% deviation from the code. So for example, if a 15-foot setback was required, and I think this slide is backwards, so I apologize for that. But let's say 10 feet is proposed, and that would be a 33% variance, and that would be less than the 50%, and staff would review it. The Board of Adjustment looks at variances that are over 50%. So if that 15-foot setback was wanting to be reduced down to 5 feet, that would be a greater difference in the setback. The Board of Adjustment can also, if we are reviewing an administrative variance that's less than 50% or up to 50%, the Board of Adjustment will also hear those cases if we have a legitimate objection, one or more, that come before us in the process of noticing the public for the hearing. We had one of those last week, in fact. And so on the variance criteria, it's the criteria the application needs to meet the majority of the review criteria. And this would be true of either staff or the Board of Adjustment. And the general criteria is whether or not it would be not yield a reasonable return on investment or use, would not alter the essential character of the area, that they're making a substantial investment that wouldn't be possible without the variance. There's a unique hardship, such as a lot size or shape or severe topography. It would not be detrimental to the public. It would allow for a reasonable accommodation for a person with disabilities. So for example, a ramp and a front setback to get to their door. And then substantially complies with all the other development standards. The public gets involved in these quasi-judicial cases, which are court-like, through the public hearing process, and there's an opportunity to provide comments in writing or testify at the hearing. And then on appeals, we sometimes will have a question on, can this be appealed? Staff decisions can be appealed to the Board of Adjustment within 10 days following their staff's decision. And then the Board of Adjustment decisions can be appealed to the district court within 30 days after their decision. And so even though the board doesn't meet very frequently, their role is really important because they hear the larger variances and they also make code interpretations. And so they have a very important role in the city. There's an example of some odd-shaped lots in the Bel Air neighborhood where you could imagine someone might need a variance because their lot was a triangular shape. All right, so with that, I'm going to move over to the Planning Commission now. The Planning Commission has a similar role in that they hear quasi-judicial matters before them, which are public hearings. They also make recommendations to council on legislative items such as long-range planning and also amendments to the zoning and development code. They are the final decision maker on Type 2, formerly known as major subdivisions, specific development plans, and planned building groups. And in 2023, they held 9 meetings and heard 20 public hearing cases. Some of the cases included those legislative code amendments. There were 10 of those in total. Some of them are listed up here on the left side column, where it says AH after them. Those were in particularly related to affordable housing items, so the dedication of public parks and sites and amendment to the parking requirements. And then they also heard in a quasi-judicial manner some land use cases, a couple of specific development plans, 6 zone changes, and then 1 major subdivision, which again now would be a Type 2, and then in the legislative role, they also reviewed the 44th Avenue subarea plan. In 2024, we're going to continue down the path of making necessary code amendments. They heard the EV parking and bike parking in January, and then the public notice, extension of public notice mailings in March. And then upcoming are the landscape code revisions that they'll take a look at a little bit later in the spring here. We've also got several land use cases that will be coming in. We have some outline development plans, an amendment at Clear Creek Crossing, that's in the works, and then also several specific development plans in the works at Clear Creek Crossing. And then we're also reviewing several zone change requests. And those come in throughout the year pretty frequently. And then again, they'll be looking at the city plan. And with regard to the city plan, per state law, it is the duty of the commission to make and adopt a final master plan for the physical development of the city. The master plan in this case is a city plan, or right now our current comprehensive plan is Envision Wheat Ridge. And it's a forward-looking document that guides growth and development for the next 20 or so years. And so the Planning Commission will have 2 or 3 opportunities to talk with the consultant and be interactive in the formulation of the city plan. And then they'll review the final plan and make a recommendation to the city council sometime in 2025. And so again, their role in land use cases is quasi-judicial, it's court-like, there are public hearings involved, and the factors that they consider in their decision-making are the code requirements, the public's testimony, the applicants and their consultants' testimony, and also staff's testimony, the staff report, and staff's recommendation. The public is involved before notice goes out. They can take a look at the projects and properties map. They can also contact staff with any questions if they see a project that's near them and they would like more information. After notice goes out via letter, public notification, and a sign posting, they can go to Wheat Ridge Speaks and see the packet, of course, and then provide written comments or speak in person at the hearing. Most decisions by the planning commissions are recommendations to city council. However, as the final decision maker, the planning commission's decision can be appealed to the city council. And that's it for me. Thank you.
And we do have some members, don't we, Jana and
Oh,
Lauren?
yes, I'm
Do you want to
sorry.
introduce our members
Yes.
who are here this evening?
Yes, we do. We have one of our commissioners, Pat Quinn, and then we also have our interim chair, Christine Disney.
Did they, Christine, you have a speech? You have a presentation? Do you want anything to say? Okay, come on up.
We may not have enough time for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Jana, thank you.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Mary Hester. I'm our sustainability coordinator. So I will be giving an update on Sustainable Wheat Ridge, and I'll give you an overview of the committee, and then I'm mostly just going to focus on their work and accomplishments from last year, and then what some of our bigger project items are for 2024. So I'll start with just a brief overview of the committee. Their mission is here on the screen before you and focuses both on advising the city on environmental sustainability matters, as well as getting out into the community, doing outreach and engagement, both to residents and businesses throughout Wheat Ridge. And the committee itself is made up of 12 members representing all 4 council districts in Wheat Ridge. I'm their staff liaison, and then we have council member Holteen is our wonderful council liaison and a great resource for all of us. So the committee was created back in 2017, tasked with creating the first sustainability action plan for the city. And since then, they've been focusing in the 6 topic areas of water, transportation, renewable energy, green building and energy efficiency, solid waste and recycling, and communications and engagement as we work to implement that plan, which we're actually in the process of updating. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the upcoming slides.
So looking back at the past year, the committee has worked on a lot of different projects. They were able to collaborate with community development staff working on helping out with some initial research for water-wise landscaping code amendments, which I think are still in process. And then also the recently adopted EV parking regulations and updated bike parking regulations. So great to get to collaborate with another department on those. The committee also worked with me to recruit and select and onboard our consultant for our residential waste engagement project. So we're working with HDR on that project. We kicked it off last July. We're planning to wrap it up this upcoming fall. So we're on a 2023 slide, but this is very much an ongoing and current project. We'll actually be back in about a month with HDR to go in a lot more detail with kind of the feedback that we've heard from the public so far and what our next steps are in this project. But we have had a lot of good engagement from the committee or from the community so far. We received almost 900 public comments in our first round of public engagement, just kind of looking at all the possible alternative waste management methods. So HDR is working to kind of boil all of that down and figure out what our key takeaways are. So we'll tell you all the details about that in about a month. And then the committee also worked to continue organizing and volunteering our community-wide, mostly recycling events, but sustainability events. So they worked with our Sustainable Neighborhoods program last year to host 2 e-waste recycling events, paint recycling, which we usually partner with Green Sheen on, and then worked with scraps on our annual fall yard waste compost weekend. So all in all, I think that's about a little over 50-ish thousand pounds of various items that we were able to keep out of the landfill, and had good attendance across all of those events. So continuing to look back at 2023, I worked with Joy Opp. She's one of the chairs of Sustainable Wheat Ridge. We mentored one of the first Wheat Ridge 102 groups. Our project team was focusing on green business, so which has also been a big priority of Sustainable Wheat Ridge. These residents are not on the committee, but elsewhere throughout Wheat Ridge, and they spent several months just looking at how we could implement a green business program in Wheat Ridge, talking to other communities about how they've been able to successfully do that, and we'll go more into the outcome of that on the next slide. We received another grant from Charge Ahead Colorado last year to install 2 level 2 EV charging stations at Anderson Park. So those will be the 3rd and 4th city-owned charging stations to be installed, which is really exciting. They're not installed yet. We're hoping to work with Excel to use them to hopefully put in some of the back-end infrastructure through one of their programs, and looking for those to be constructed later this year. Speaking of funding, we were also awarded funding through the state Colorado Water Conservation Board for turf replacement. So we are going to be rolling out this year, and hopefully we'll have some money left over for next year to start offering lawn replacement programs in Wheat Ridge, which I'll also talk a little bit more in an upcoming slide. For the past couple of years, the committee has been presenting our annual Green Business Award. So that went to the Craft Box last year, and they joined the Wheelie Bean and Stylus and Crate as previous winners of that award. And hopefully we'll have a much bigger focus on green business moving forward. And last December, we were also able to get 2 air quality monitors installed, so one at the rec center and one at Panorama Park. And those came from a grant that Jefferson County Public Health got to replicate Denver's Love My Air program, which is essentially just a network of air quality monitors that they mostly put at schools throughout Denver. So the county has installed several of those. They feed into a live dashboard, so people can look up real-time air quality data for any sort of sites that they're interested in, and we are working on getting everything updated with logos and whatnot, and then we'll kind of do a big announcement about that out to the community and be able to share that information with people. And let's see, the last thing that I want to highlight from last year is just the continuation of our Sustainable Neighborhoods program. So we've got 4 neighborhoods in the program right now. They cover about 30% of the city area-wise. And it's just been a really great program. It's for residents, it's by residents, so it's meant to allow them to really focus on kind of anything sustainability related that they are interested in. We've got several committee members that are on the leadership teams for their neighborhoods. And so our Wheat Ridge neighborhoods last year held a combination of 21 different events and workshops and club meetings, and were able to engage with 1,249 residents. So that might have been things like garden tours, water conservation workshops, composting workshops, things like that, but really whatever they're interested in doing. All right. So looking at some of our bigger ticket items for 2024, again, we're planning to wrap up the residential waste engagement project later this year in the fall. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but we are in the process of updating our sustainability action plan for the first time since it was created in 2017 and 2018. So we're working with our consultant Lotus on that. We've met with a couple of members of council so far, but they've been working to do some informational interviews with staff and with Sustainable Wheat Ridge and a couple of other stakeholders. And so we're thinking that that project will probably wrap up around July and will guide kind of our next 5 years of sustainability actions in the city. But a really good time to be doing this update. The committee has worked extremely hard. I think we're at 64% of the 2018 plan being either completed or in progress. So feels like a really good time to be thinking about kind of the next steps for us. Let's see. We also talked about how we mentored the Wheat Ridge 102 class focusing on green business. Their recommendation was that we apply to join the state Colorado Green Business Network. And so we did that earlier this year. We've been accepted into the network, which is really exciting. So Cole and I are going to be administering that and working with Sustainable Wheat Ridge to go out and be able to offer technical assistance to businesses. And then the program has various levels of recognition that are built in that we'll be able to kind of roll with and build off of. So we're working on launching that program, kind of getting all our materials ready, going through training, and we are about to start reaching out to our first couple of businesses that we're interested in to see if they'd be willing to pilot with us as we kind of learn the ropes of the program. We're also using the funding that we got from the State Water Conservation Board to expand our programs that we offer through Resource Central, which is a local water conservation nonprofit. So that's how we're going to start offering the turf replacement program. So we are offering discounts up to $500 and 500 square feet, where people can either remove the turf themselves and have Resource Central give them nice kind of garden kits to fill it in with much more prettier and lower water using native plants, or Resource Central will come out and do the work themselves. So we're offering 10 of those this year to start with, and we've already had more than that number of people apply. So we're looking in to see if we can get any more discounts this year. Otherwise, we'll plan to continue to offer those programs next year as well. So we've seen a lot of great demand there. And other than that, just in general, continuing to seek funding, continue to offer our community-facing programs and events, get the committee out there into the community, and continue to offer these programs here that we've got up on the screen. So let's see, we've done Mayor's Monarch Pledge the last couple of years, focusing on how to create and protect pollinator habitat, continuing our compost drop-off partnership with Scraps, and then continuing to work with Fresh Food Connect to encourage gardeners in Wheat Ridge to be donating their extra produce. So the committee has been very busy, a lot going on, and just really thankful to have them and to have your support with everything that we are doing. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. That concludes all of our presentations. I'll hand it back over to you, but we are all available for any questions that you might have.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and all of our other presenters. The question slide is on the deck up there, so who wants to go first? Counselor Hulteen.
Thank you. I just first want to thank everyone who's here tonight, both staff and our volunteers who serve on these boards and commissions. This is really, really helpful, just because there's a lot of specific work that's done there. And I probably knew 80% of this, but even I learned a couple things tonight. And it's a helpful resource too, as we're thinking about when we're recruiting people, we can point them to this presentation or this packet so that they can get some of this information. And it would also be kind of fun to hear a little bit in the presentations, just like what it's like to volunteer on the committee. Sort of what is that time commitment look like what are the meetings like what kind of engagement. I mean, there's a lot of programming that was mentioned here, but if they're doing programming in the community, what does that interface look like? Because I think a lot of this is not just for our information, but also to really paint the picture of both, what is the quality of experience when you're serving on one of our boards and commissions, as well as, the impact it has both on our civic life and our communities. So really appreciate everyone's time on this. And I think this is a great resource and instructive. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to everybody who put together this report. I just wanted to ask, where on the website would we find this? So if you were going on our website to boards and commissions, then would there be a link to the report for it, or?
Yeah, we haven't discussed where to make it public and how to advertise it yet, but we can definitely take that note if you'd like us to make it a public document and see what the best way to do that would be.
I think it would be, as Councilwoman Hulteen said, it would be helpful when you're trying to describe to people, hey, I saw that you applied for this board, but I also saw in your attached resume, you might actually be a better fit for this board. It might be helpful for people who are applying for our different boards and commissions, just to kind of have a little more of a specific overview about what they do.
Yeah, we can get it up on the homepage for boards and commissions.
Great. And then my other question is, so with the Building Code Advisory Board, that is one board that has to have specific skill sets on the board, but our application currently doesn't denote that when someone is applying for the Building Code Advisory Board. And so I just wanted to just ask if we could make sure that we make that correction on there so that people understand that when they're applying, if you're applying and your expertise are in restaurant or retail, then you're not going to get appointed because we need architects and general contractors and those kind of people on that board specifically. So, thank you very much for your work on this, you guys. Oh, and maybe one other thing to note, when you do put it on the website, is that, this is for 2023. And so there, and terms expired in March and we're in April. So there's now different people on these boards. So maybe somewhere to just kind of note, this is the current board. That was the board during 2023 or something like that.
Thank you. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everybody who put this report together. I always kind of learn something every study session, and I was looking up Resource Central. I've kind of heard of them. I didn't know they got into the, the turf removal, so that was very interesting. The one question I did kind of have is and maybe things have changed, but there's a lot of boards, a lot of committees, commissions. Is how I know we've done this report, but how is it when it relates to the website? Is there kind of like an overall depository where you can click on and here is everything? Because I know in the past it's been tough sometimes where I've had people asking like, where is this at? And that information for all these boards, commissions, committees, like everything that you could, if you want to be involved in Wheat Ridge, kind of here's your starting point.
Yeah, on the website, I can't remember specifically what the header is called, but there's a section, it's something like get involved or, be a leader. And if they hover over that section, it'll take them to the boards and commissions pages and our individual pages for committees. But yeah, I take that note that we can always do better in trying to organize our website in a way that makes it easy for people to get involved in the projects that we want them to. And we're constantly looking for ways to improve upon that.
Thank you, bud. Yeah, great job. Thank you.
I think Mr. Goff pulled it up right away.
There is,
He's an experienced user.
there's a tab, Explore and Engage. And if you hover over that, as Cole mentioned, it comes up with all kinds of different opportunities, and there is a separate page for boards and commissions. But, yeah.
Any further questions or comments for our staff? It's a great report. Thank you all for coming tonight. Really appreciate the information. This is the first time I recall that we've really had a comprehensive report on boards and commissions, and I think it's very helpful, and I think it's really a great program to have. I mean, the boards and commissions are great, but it's great to have a summary and keep track of the great work that people are doing throughout the city. So thank you all for bringing that together, and thanks to all of our volunteers for serving on boards and commissions. It's how many city councilors have been on a board and commission before you got into council? I think almost everybody. So it's a great proving ground for city council, and it's a great way to stay active in our community. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Cole. Jana? Lauren? Or what's your new name, Jana? Yana? Yana. You shouldn't have said that. Now I'm gonna call you that all the time. Hi, Joe. Yeah, there's two seats here. So you can sit in one of those.
Right there with the microphone. Okay. Come in every direction. That's all right.
How do I get that to the full screen?
Okay.
Okay, oh boy, we're gonna have a full table for this discussion. Good. All right,
You too.
this is the numero trace.
You think I should have done that? It doesn't matter.
Wait till everybody sits down and,
They're all right.
I know. When they're ready, we'll get going.
Oh, my.
Okay. Okay. Let's get all the drivers in place. Okay, thank you. We're going to start our third item tonight, which is liquor licensing authority. So with that, Mr. Goff?
Great, thank you. Yeah, we got the dream team here this evening, so I'll turn it over to Margie, who will, our senior deputy city clerk, who will introduce all of our guests and speakers this evening. Margie?
Thank you very much. As Mr. Goff said, I'm Margie Greer, your new Senior Deputy City Clerk. And with us tonight, we have your City Clerk, Steve Kirkpatrick, the Chair of the Liquor Authority, Morgan Richards, and Joe Rivera is from our city's attorney's office, and he's an expert in everything liquor. So thank you for being here. They'll help answer questions. So we'll just kind of start in. I think a few weeks ago, City Council adopted an emergency ordinance allowing your city manager to appoint a temporary hearing officer in the place of our resident board, because we were having so many issues trying to get a quorum together, et cetera. So tonight, we're offering what we hope is a permanent solution. But I have about 8 slides, I'll make it quick, and then we'll be open for discussion, Q&A, okay? This is just an overview of what was probably already in your packet, but I want to talk about the current structure of the Liquor Authority Board. It's a resident board consisting of 8 members, as you know, since you appoint those members. Their primary responsibility is to hold hearings for new applications and for show cause hearings.
The city attorney attends each meeting. We have staff that attends each meeting. The board members, it's the only board members, I believe, that have to go through a background check. And they also have to have liquor training before they can vote on anything. Some of the challenges that we have, I should say next slide. Some of the current challenges we have is what's brought us here today, and that is efficient applicants to fill positions. And I've only been with the city 10 weeks, so I'm going off of past history and what your city clerk, Steve Kirkpatrick, has told me, and Robin Eaton is the staff liaison to the board, and they continue to say we can't fill positions. So we continually have lack of a quorum, which causes delays to the new businesses opening, delays to disciplinary actions. When we do have a show cause hearing, there's a cost to the training of new members, and the turnover on the authority is constant. Last minute continuances, inefficient, and it's frustrating for all parties. We talked about one time where we had somebody drive in from Nebraska, I believe, for a hearing, and we didn't have a quorum, and they had to turn around and drive back and come back the following meeting. Liquor laws are complex. They're not intuitive. Infrequent meetings result in knowledge loss with our members. There's a lack of flexibility with some of the state-imposed laws, and there's possible decision challenges. So those are the challenges that we have with the current structure. And here's some advantages to having one administrative hearing officer rather than an 8-member resident board. And that is that we're business friendly. We could get those doors open quicker on those businesses. The efficient hearings, we know they're going to be follow proper rules of procedure. It places the authority in a qualified and trained individual, reducing the liability for the city. It aligns with the existing state licenses, which are done by an administrative hearing officer, reduces staff time, and we believe that the savings in the attorney time may offset the cost of a hearing officer. I think with new applications, Joe probably wouldn't have to be at every meeting. We'd probably save him for show cause hearings. And on the other side, and this is a big one, it's the consequences of hiring an administrative hearing officer, is that it removes the residents from the decision-making process. And we don't take that lightly. We appreciate the volunteers as much as you do. But in this instance, and I think it's probably the only place with your boards and commissions where a hearing officer makes good sense. Currently, here's a list, and I don't even believe it's a complete list, of cities that are way ahead of us and already using administrating hearing officers for their liquor authority. I got to institute a hearing officer in Lakewood, and they've been doing it now for almost 20 years. And it's smooth, it's efficient, it's really a smart way to go. The responsibilities, currently the responsibilities are broken up so that the hearing officer takes care of new applications, show cause hearings, applications for change in location, appeal hearings for administrative decisions. If they want to, if we make a decision in the clerk's office, they can always take it to the hearing officer to have it if they appeal it. The hearing officer approves policies, approves subpoenas for issuance. And currently, if you look down below where it says administratively what the city clerk is doing, the fourth and fifth one that have asterisks by them,
currently the hearing officer is doing those as well. We're proposing that the city clerk does, approves modification of premises and special event permits. So I don't need to read them all to you, but currently the board has already by resolution passed all those on to the city clerk's office anyway. So, short and sweet. Summary of the proposed amendments to the ordinance. The liquor licensing authority becomes the administrative hearing officer appointed by the city manager. And the ordinance that's in your packet removes all the language referring to the liquor licensing authority board or its members. Definition of investigator includes the community service officer. And it defines the roles of the city attorney and city clerk. And since we were looking at changing the ordinance anyway, we went ahead and added, the state has allowed vintner restaurants to have tasting, so we decided it was a good time to put that in there under the radar and get it taken care of. So in a nutshell, that's it. And all four of us are here to answer any of your questions. Yes, Amanda. Sorry, Councilwoman Weaver.
Counselor Weaver.
Thank you. I think this is a great idea, though I just want to say for the record that this was what I was hoping to move to after my council position was over. But that will no longer be an option if we go forward with this. No, I think this is a great suggestion. I'd like to hear from the city whether do we have the money for this kind of position, or does it really offset the sort of getting rid of the 8 people and the.
Yeah, again, we do believe it's going to offset. Mr. Rivera does spend quite a bit of time today with the board. We believe that will be offset. I'm sorry, do you have something? Oh, yeah, so yes, we don't believe it's a financial impact.
Great. Yeah, the reason I think it's a great idea is because it is so legislated already. And so to have, a more professional person making those decisions, it's not as if, I can be on the board and decide where and when and all the things I would like to decide on this kind of board. I'm teasing. But I am bummed that I don't get to be on this board now if we make it go away. So thank you, and I do support this move.
Thank you, Counselor Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. And don't worry, Councilwoman Weaver, there's plenty of places for you on different boards and commissions. We'll find one. This, I think, is an absolute appropriate move. I was in the restaurant industry for a long time as a general manager. My name had to be on the liquor license. And if I was on shift and we had an incident where the police came and ticketed us, I had 24 hours to turn myself in, right? It's serious. The liquor licensing is serious. And I think it's important that we have a professional who that very specifically does this for a living to be doing this, because there is a lot of liability that goes around along with it. And I think that, at first I was kind of like, well, I don't want to take away opportunities for our community to be involved. But the reality is we have 3 open seats now. We've had 3 to 4 open seats on that board for a very long time. And we had restaurants that had to wait 2 to 3 months to get their liquor license because they couldn't get a hearing. And that is just not business friendly at all. And that's not our goal. We definitely want to work towards being business friendly. And so I appreciate you putting together these options. I fully support them. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm definitely in support of this, and thank you, staff, for everything that you've done to push this forward. One question I did have is with the, and just bear with me. So for marijuana, is that more of a state licensure versus local?
It's it's both, similar, very similar to liquor.
Because there's no board or anything.
But no, it
That's all.
it doesn't require an authority like liquor.
Okay.
But there is a state marijuana, division that, promulgates all the rules. And, we have our own ordinance, that they must follow also in license with us.
But a lot different than the liquor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank-
similar but different, yeah.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Mr. Goff, I can add to that too. Like, this is quite similar to other licensing programs, so you make a really good point. And a lot of our licensing programs either, we do use an administrative hearing officer in these cases. So tobacco retailing is a great idea, is a great analogy, I think, it's very similar to this. So when there's a violation with tobacco retailing, their appeal is to an AHO here in the city. So this is pretty much in line with, we're proposing something that's very in line with what we're already doing.
Thank you. Counselor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also am very much in support of this. I think this is transitioning us and moving us in a direction of being more business friendly and offering a level of customer service that our community expects of the city. And so I really appreciate us kind of taking a look at this and finding ways in which we can maybe be more efficient. And so thank you for serving as well, and really excited to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. And this makes so much sense, that it definitely has my support. The two questions I have is, in a typical year, how many new liquor licenses does the city grant?
That number varies from year to year. We have around 95 to 100 liquor licenses in force, and every one of those needs to be renewed every year. If there are new applicants for a new license, that's just a bigger pile of paper that has to be put together and a lot more background investigations, et cetera. When the renewal comes through and it's the same manager in the same place, it's pretty simple. Did I answer your question, council member?
But just sort of a rough number for how many new ones get in an average year?
Well, technically, every year it's a new license. It's a renewal of the license, yes, but brand new licensees, in the last year, we've had more than any year since I've been here, largely because we have a lot of new restaurants opening, et cetera. I was about ready to see someplace between 12 and 18, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it does with some of the new businesses opening. This certainly seems like this will facilitate that sort of thing and be business friendly for our new businesses. The other question I have is just a real basic one. Does the addition of a administrative hearing officer add a FTE to the city?
No, it does not. We currently work with our attorney's office or the court to find those hearing officers. Currently, our interim judge, Basso, fills that role occasionally for different cases. Joe, do you have anything to add to that? But we do have, it'd be good to have a list of hearing officers that we can go into, but
because of the number of municipalities in the metro area that have the AHO model, has sprung up a kind of cottage industry of folks who serve in this function. So there are 3 or 4 or 5 that I'm aware of that basically circulate throughout the metro area and serve as the AHO for various municipalities.
Well, that certainly helps. And are these people typically attorneys, or what's their background?
It's a requirement that they're an attorney.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to break my poor mother's heart and ask for a consensus that we move to.
I tell you what, I've got a little question before you do that. So if we're kind of done with the discussion, we talk about under the definition of investigator, that it's a member of the police department or a community service officer as provided by section 2-33. And I was wondering where I would find that. Is that in the ordinance or?
It's a,
It's a reference to another section of the
Somewhere
code.
else?
Yes.
It's a reference to another portion of the city code. And the hearing officer, the community service officer is the same community service officer that serves for other functions for the city. For example, in the planning and zoning function, or the person who goes when there's too many weeds in a yard, that same person.
Right.
And there are various types of offenses in the liquor law world, and some of them are more serious and some of them are less serious. It was envisioned that the type of offenses that would be handled by the CSO would be offenses having to do with the space used to sell liquor. So, for example, and when Safeways were permitted to sell wine, they had to designate an area within the Safeway to sell wine. And one of the functions one of the issues that kind of comes up that is a less serious issue is the particular store selling wine in the particular area they're supposed to be selling wine in. And so it's something that's important to monitor, but it's also something that's appropriate for a CSO.
I also want to add to that traditionally a sergeant in the Wheat Ridge Police Department has been our investigator. At least that's been the case in the last 6 years. If you're Chief Murtha and you have to make a choice between sending that sergeant to investigate a domestic violence incident or to check and see if somebody's got their cigarettes, properly sold to kids, it's a no-brainer. But the community service officers have a whole lot more bandwidth to do this. And I'm really glad you guys are happy with it, because it's like the guy says on the ads for the bank, the easiest decision in the history of decisions. This may be the easiest policy decision in the history of this council. It is, in my mind, a slam dunk. Thank you.
So the section 232 would be in the
It's a reference to the
in the
city-
code
yeah,
code
city
of
code.
laws, so I could just Google that, or go to the website and download it. That's okay. I just want to know where we might find it. Additional discussion, Counselor Holteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am definitely in support of this, and it seems like an elegant solution to many problems. But to Margie's point, I would be interested in hearing from Morgan. We are losing the community voice in this process, and so I just would love to hear from you in terms of what your experience has been as a citizen representing on this board, and what your thoughts are in terms of like community voice versus switching over to the hearing officer.
well, as the chair, I'm very supportive, as I spoke the last time I was in front of you all, because the longer I have served on the liquor board, I started to really understand we're making decisions that can only be appealed to a state district court. And while we have different expertise amongst us and knowledge amongst the board members, we are not attorneys. And I try to go in and read the code, and I became increasingly concerned. This seems like a liability issue for our city, in addition to the problem we've had with volunteerism. And I think there's so many other places where we could use people who want to devote some time to the city versus what isn't an efficient process at this time. I can tell you that I think that the cost could be close to cost neutral, because we need Joe to step us through things that are more complex, because, we may have something in our ordinance that isn't quite in line with what the state has said. And I just became increasingly concerned about this. And I started looking around. I'm like, what do other cities do? Well, they have a review officer, which would be really efficient. In addition to the Nebraska example, we had a local restaurant. They had to come 3 times before we could complete their process. And the second time, most of us showed up. And when we got here, there wasn't enough quorum. And that, all volunteerism aside, that doesn't feel good. This needs to be excellent
for our business because so much revenue is generated from this.
Yeah, thank you.
Does that answer?
It really does, and it just
Yeah.
really affirms everything that it's actually not a good, best use of our volunteers' times. And
Exactly.
when I was in real estate in Colorado, you quasi-practice law, like it's very loosely interpreted here in Colorado, and it caused me endless anxiety and and I was getting paid a lot of money and highly trained and with governance on that. So I really appreciate that this is a situation that's actually putting our citizen volunteers in uncomfortable situations. So very enthusiastic, and I see some.
Yeah, and thanks for asking. Yeah.
So, what happens so the board has a quasi judicial function. So they serve as a court, and they are to determine whether there was a liquor violation. So just like a court of law, they determine whether a law was broken or not. And then if so, they determine what the appropriate sanction or punishment should be. And that should be either a fine or a suspension. And much like the process that I know that Jerry walks you through, when we have a hearing, we gather all the evidence, and then I write up the findings in order, and then I present it to the board at a subsequent meeting, and they approve it. And part of the cost savings that we realized through this change to the AHO is that I will no longer write those orders, but the AHO would write them for himself or herself.
And Margie, you had,
I just wanted to let council know that we really are concerned about losing good volunteers, and that our office will reach out to each of them, and hopefully they'll apply for another board or commission that we have openings on, if not now, but in the future. But they are valuable, and we know that. They help our city run, so we'll make sure that we reach out to all of them.
thank you. Well, I don't want to steal up Mayor Pro Tem's thunder, so I'm going to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
And those volunteers are absolutely important in everything that they do. And hopefully the board members that are on the Liquor Authority, we can find some spaces for them. Now, back to firing my mom. I asked for a consensus that we move to an administrative hearing officer instead of Liquor Authority.
Looks like we have consensus on that. Is that the information you need to move this forward? Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it, and you all sticking around to be number 3 on the batting order. All right. Thank you very much. That concludes our business portion of the meeting. Not that it's a business meeting, but we will now go to staff reports. Mr. Goff.
Nothing else from staff this evening?
Oh, my gosh, it's looking pretty good now. We will go now to elected officials reports. Councilor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to congratulate Executive Director Paige Piper and her team at Local Works. We had an amazing unveiling event and ribbon cutting for the Clear Creek Makerspace this last Saturday. Great turnout, and we are very excited to have that new organization in our community to offer all of the creatives here in Wheat Ridge and from around surrounding neighborhoods coming into the community and using that space to make wonderful things. And I also just wanted to wish everybody a happy CMAS week. That's been anxiety in our household. So I have to actually jet out of here because I need to get a kiddo to bed for testing in the morning. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you. I too just want to say congratulations to Paige and everyone who helped make the Makerspace happen. It was, I think, just an example of Wheat Ridge at its best. I think Mayor Pro Tem mentioned there were 650 people, they estimated. Somebody told me that. Yeah, at the opening. And I'm just excited to see what's next. And I just wanted to share a story that one of my constituents told me when I was there. He was really excited because he had told his wife that he wanted Wednesday nights were going to be his night at the Makerspace. And he had pointed out that she has yoga on Saturday mornings and he's going to have Makerspace. But it wasn't even that he was going to be setting his Wednesday nights aside. He actually was reaching out to several of his friends, and it was going to be a time for him to go connect with his close friends and do it at the Makerspace. So it's not just making things, it's building community. And he was also really excited that he thought he could sell several tools in his garage. Yeah. So I'm sure everyone's happy about that. And then I just wanted to make mention, Denver Post ran a great story about a District 2 hair salon that has been in business for 60 years and is closing down. And I just really want to recognize Beauty Inc. has a legacy and just reminds me of a lot of Wheat Ridge that has had generations of being in the community and serving the community, and a lot of personal stories. And when we lose businesses like that, it's the natural attrition that happens as proprietors, age out of wanting to run their businesses, and but it's always a loss. And so just want to congratulate them on a lot of good years in our community and a lot of good haircuts. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Additional items, Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, the Makerspace was fantastic, and congratulations to Paige and her team. It's really phenomenal what that's going to do for our city. I also want to thank Applewood Villages and Sustainable Applewood for putting together a really cool, they're really good at putting together neighborhood events and different things like that, but they put together an Easter egg hunt on Saturday for all the residents in the neighborhood at Lewis Meadows Park. So thank you to them. And then we had a fantastic District 3 meeting on Saturday morning at the rec center. We had about almost 30 people there, I think, and Lutheran did a fantastic job. Greg Moss and his team did a great job presenting. I think they got some mixed reviews, and there's a lot of trepidation and some worry about what's going to happen there. But I know we've got some discussions coming up that's going to be huge. But I want to thank all of the District 3 residents who came out and provided a great discussion on Saturday morning. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Snell.
Thank you. Another echo for just a great grand opening for the Makerspace. An amazing experience. It's an amazing facility for our community, and it's just great to see so many folks out. I also need to mention and welcome a new restaurant that opened today in District 1. Rolling Smoke Barbecue is open today. Took one for the team and had lunch there. I can say that it is fantastic. Met the whole team there, and they mentioned they're going to do a grand opening and ribbon cutting in about a month, but we're just really happy to have them in walking distance. And I would like to also mention, today is April 1st. This kicks off Donate Life Month. If you're not a registered organ donor, please consider that. It is a life-changing thing that you can do for someone. That's all I got.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to remind all the viewers at home that tomorrow, April 2nd, at 6 o'clock, at the Anderson Park Building, Councilmember Leah Dozeman and I will be hosting a district meeting, and we are really hoping to get a good turnout. And I think we've got a pretty good program. We have the public information officer from Wheat Ridge Police Department will provide us an update on crime and traffic statistics and data. And we will get an update on the Lutheran Lutheran Hospital move, and we'll even get a recap from Paige on Makerspace. So it's going to be a pretty packed agenda. We hope to move things along pretty quickly. I too was totally impressed. My wife and I, on the way back after visiting Makerspace on Saturday, were just kind of just, I can't believe how many people were there, and I can't believe all the things going on. The thing that really kind of stuck with us, though, is this idea of pulling creativity out from thin air. Creativity is not something that just happens. Creativity involves a lot of work, and it involves a certain amount of time. And it just, there was a very, very smart person at one time that said, no doubt creativity is the most important resources that humans have. Without creativity, there is no progress, and we'd be forever repeating the same pattern. Creativity lives at Makerspace.
Great. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. And you had me at barbecue. Anytime I'm always open for barbecue. That is such a wonderful experience. I will absolutely make sure that I stop by. I've just been dreaming of when is that going to open. We have a lot of good restaurants opening up in Wheat Ridge. But before I go down that food path, I want to make it short and just say, Paige, if you're listening, I'm very proud of you. The Makerspace was amazing. I made a point to go see the Makerspace months and months ago, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months, and had Tyler. I just wanted to see, like, what does it look like? So I got a chance to see it, what it originally was. And it's like, when you see it now, it's wow, it is amazing. And I wish nothing but the best for this, and I hope that the community really sees this as the gem and gets that membership up. It's amazing for the city to have something like this. I think we all appreciate it, and we saw everybody that was there. There's a lot of people that are very, very interested, and it's amazing. So thank you, Paige and Local Works.
Thank you. Did you have another something, Mr. Weaver, Councilor Weaver? Okay.
I mean, I would like to say something, but I haven't said anything yet.
Okay. You're up now.
Okay, I just wanted to thank Counselor Snell for bringing up what today is as far as the Donate Life. This marks a year today that my brother passed and was able to save 3 lives across the country because he had that heart on his license. So check the box, and I'm just remembering him today. So thanks.
Thank you all. I want to express my thanks to all the folks who came in and gave presentations to us tonight. A lot of volunteers in the city and our school officials coming, and we really appreciate those updates. I will just kind of echo and say ditto to everything everyone said about the Makerspace. Great place. And as I said at the ribbon cutting, this is really the way to make community. And I think we've got a lot going on there. I left a great ceremony at the Makerspace to go over to the 60th party to celebrate Beauty Inc. And I want to thank Pamela Tonales, Lee Lombardi's daughter, for sort of putting that on and for celebrating 60 years of a great business, and many of those in Wheat Ridge. Thursday, kind of a big day for some ribbon cuttings, talking about things opening. I've got a ribbon cutting on this Thursday at 3 p.m. for Illegal Pete's and the cutting room, both at 26th at Gold's Marketplace. And so it's great to see so many new businesses and so much life flowing up in our city. So we will be back next week with a regular city council meeting. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope to see you again. If there's no more business to come before us, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.